Hello. So, I should probably have cut this clip up into multiple pieces, but honestly, we're descending Pikes Peak in Colorado, and this place is just beautiful. I couldn't split this up into multiple pieces. You just need to see it in its entirety. It took us about 40 minutes to descend down, which, by the way, I think the record holder for the fastest Pikes Peak ascent is a Ducati Multistrada at 12 minutes, which is fucking unbelievable, especially considering very few guardrails, and I mean, just look. One wrong turn and you're just going straight over. Anyway, let me start over. This is going to get a little ranty. And in advance, apologies for the poor audio. My PurplePanda died at some point very, very early on in the trip, which is my mic that I keep in my helmet. And I didn't have audio for anything except for this descent. And the only reason that I have audio here is that I forgot to plug in the PurplePanda, so good thing, I guess. Whatever. So the audio is going to sound windy at times. It'll sound muffled. It'll go up and down a little bit. But anyway, it should give you a pretty good idea of what this experience was like. And so throughout the video, I'll kind of comment on the bike. This is a Diavel 1260S with a full Termi exhaust, which I don't think I wore them for this one, but really need earplugs for this thing. It's so godly loud. And whatever, it may not be as loud as some of the Harley exhausts, but certainly not something that I've been used to. I'll start off by let me talk about Colorado for a little bit. First of all, Denver is whatever. Just fly into Denver and leave. Head to Breckenridge, which is where we stayed. Head to Aspen. Vail, I mean, whatever. Depending on what you're into. We didn't like Vail all that much. Aspen is beautiful. Breckenridge is great. Anything in and around Independence Pass, which is one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen, is fantastic. Good shit. Originally, we had thought to get a trailer, hook that up to my Volvo XC90, or at the time I had a Volvo XC90, drive out the 30 hours from New York City to Denver, and Greg, who's my buddy in front of me here, would rent a bike. And then we woke up one day and said, that's fucking stupid. Who the hell wants to drive out for 30 hours and then ride every day like we did? We rode anywhere from 5 to 7, 8 hours a day. We rode a lot. Side note, if you're gonna ride that much, God, look at this beauty. This was just magnificent out there. If you're gonna ride that much, do not rent a Ducati Diavel. Not the right bike for that. No fairing. Not built for it. Anyway, I'll go into more detail on the bike in a bit. So we go into Colorado, and we do a couple of trips, right? I hadn't planned anything in specific for each day, but I had planned specific kind of routes that we would take. And, so we came into Denver, we picked up our bikes, rode out to Breckenridge. Breckenridge is beautiful. I think it's 9,000 or so feet up in the air. Or above sea level. So about 9,000 feet above sea level. In the first 24 hours, we kind of struggled a little bit. Heavy headaches. Took some ibuprofen, we were fine. After that, for most of the rest of the trip, I kind of struggled to catch my breath a bit. Nothing too crazy, but if I was doing anything remotely long, intensive, like if we were hiking or something, I'd really struggle to catch my breath. Yeah, and I'm a big guy, right? 230 pounds or so. Greg is a bit lighter. He didn't struggle to catch his breath. But again, nothing overly concerning. When I was on my bike, it was perfectly fine. Didn't even notice. So we stayed in Breckenridge throughout the time. Garaged our bikes there. You know, good experience. We rode out a couple, every day from Breckenridge. There was one trip that we took out to Hot Springs, just north. Then another day, this was a long day, we went out west to Vail, then went to Glenwood Springs, went south to Aspen, and then back east to Breckenridge through Independence Pass. Then another day, this day, we went up to Pikes Peak, up and down Pikes Peak. And, just in general, all these rides kind of all around that area, what a great combination of roads. I mean, it was just amazing. If you're from the city, if you're from New York City, imagine Bear Mountain, upstate. Listen to how good that exhaust sounds. So many pops and rattles. Amazing. Anyway, so imagine like Bear Mountain, like Perkins Memorial, and just spread that across for hundreds and hundreds of miles. It was just magnificent. Great riding, and most of the roads were not like this. Pikes Peak was full of tourists, and constantly speeding up to slow down. Most people like this guy. Most of everyone kind of was gracious enough to let us pass. Kind of understand. This is like a parking overflow area. This is one thing I didn't really like about Pikes Peak. Wasn't the easiest thing to get up, although it was certainly possible by anyone. But like seeing school buses up there, seeing tourists, tons of tourists, not this kind of like not the coolest experience, and that's why I liked Independence Pass so much. Far less tourists. Anyway, that guy that we just passed was telling us to keep it slow, which we kind of disregarded. Beautiful roads. At some point here, and I think I know where it is. At some point here, I actually lose my rear end because of a misshift. Anyway, Colorado was just such an amazing experience. Beautiful state. We had a great time. Now, this bike is an interesting choice. Now, keep in mind, I've only really been riding since like February or so, and so I haven't had a ton of experience riding different bikes. My bike is a Ducati Monster 1200S. That I ride in New York City, in Manhattan, and supremely agile, right? Even with that big motor, you feel like you can really grip the bike, and whatever, for lack of a better phrase, you become one with the bike. This bike is not really for that. I'm not really even sure what it's for, aside from going fast in a straight line. There's no fairing, no heated grips, right? It's essentially, so like it's not a touring bike, right? It's not a, you can't really ride it in a big city. It does really well in a straight line. And, essentially imagine like a 1970s muscle car, no airbags, no roof, just complete unadulterated power and poor handling, and really just meant to look cool, sound cool. Right here, I lose the rear end. Watch this. Scared the shit out of me. Scared the shit out of me. First time it ever happened to me. Anyway, imagine this is like a 1970s muscle car. All power, all looks, not much else. And whatever, people are going to flame me for that, but whatever. It's just, I've heard multiple other people explain it as such. Not really good at anything any more than like one or two things. So anyway, going 80 to 90 miles an hour on some of these roads, you're like gripping on for dear life. No wind protection, which whatever. The mirrors are completely useless compared to my buddy's ride, and he's in a I think it was a Kawasaki Concourse, which is the same engine as the CX-14, which is a formidable engine. Yeah, I tried out his bike for whatever 10 minutes. And it's like riding in a lazy boy. So comfortable. It's so easy to ride. Really maneuverable. It's just a huge difference from what I'm sitting on here. But regardless, it's Ducati does what Ducati does. Right? It sounds brawny as fuck. Gets tons of attention. Anytime that we pulled over anywhere, like especially like in Independence Pass, we got a ton of attention. Everyone gravitates towards the Ducati, right? Because it looks mean as hell. It's just a cool looking bike. I mean, not to mention this bike in particular had the clear clutch cover, which looks super trick. Red reservoirs. It had a decent amount of work done to it. It's just a cool looking bike. Certainly cooler than that Concourse Sport Cruiser with its saddlebags, just old man looking vibes. But one other thing to consider about, just came to mind about Colorado if you're going to make a trip out. The weather, the temps, and the weather are so fucking extreme. We wake up in the morning in Breckenridge and it's like 40, 45 degrees out, which we enjoy. We like that weather. But you still kind of dress warm-ish. You're not going to wear a t-shirt or textile. But by the time it's like 2 o'clock and you're in Denver or Glenwood Springs or just out of the mountains in general, it's 95. Right, so in that one day, you're essentially dressing on the bike for 50 degrees. There are 50 degree difference. And not to mention that in the middle of the day, usually, this time of year, and this was mid-July, they get these crazy torrential downpours.
I lost my rear
that
end back
in a lot of
there.
cases include sleet
Fish
too.
feel like crazy. Don't try to keep up. I'm not going. No. It's not that. I was in second, lost the gear, bike went into neutral, shipped it back in second and started fishing.
So this is a mandatory brake check to make sure that people aren't riding their brakes too hard. And I think this guy in front of us in that silver micro SUV or whatever you want to call it, I think he was riding it too hard, and they could tell, right? So the way that they're measuring brake fade is, I think, through a temp gauge. So if the brakes are too hot, they're going to have you pull over and let the brakes cool. Trucks have the same problem. Instead of, in fact, on route, I think it's 70 throughout Colorado in the Denver area, there's all kinds of warnings on the descents that trucks need to use engine braking. Tons of truck ramps or runaway ramps. But anyway, they're checking brake fade here. Actually, the silver SUV was fine. I think they pulled motorcycles, they just kind of let slide. Unless we're coming up to a sharp curve, we generally don't use our brakes. Engine braking goes a long way for bikes. So she just flags us by. Anyway, I'll shut up for a bit. Enjoy the ride, enjoy the views. Super windy, probably around 40 degrees or so. Well, no, maybe not 40, maybe it was like 50 degrees. By the time we hit bottom here, I think we hit 92 or 93 degrees or so. Really hard to pack for. That I really like for these windy roads is to put up the map on my phone so that I can anticipate what kind of turns are coming up. So like if you look up ahead, you've got two very, very sharp turns. So I know how fast to go into the turns and how much to slow down before I get to them. Super helpful. Especially and obviously in road tuning. Cyclists that I just passed going up the mountain, like unbelievable feats of endurance. I give so much props to those guys. It's just an unbelievable effort to make it all the way up the mountain. It's a solid hill climb. One thing I wasn't too sure on is how they make it down, right? Because brake fade is a real thing, and those guys can't engine brake, right? So we asked one of our neighbors at Breckenridge. Actually, it turns out that she did the hill climb and the descent, and she was telling us that basically you just have to become a hole with speed. And she was telling us, I don't know, maybe she was exaggerating a little bit, but whatever. I mean, she's still went up and down. She was telling us that you essentially have to be whole with going down like 50 miles an hour on a bicycle, which is crazy to me. I mean, that takes serious feats of strength and honestly balls. But I was super impressed by that. by and large were coming back down on their own. To Colorado to do Pikes Peak. Right by Pikes Peak, right at the base of it, maybe about 15-20 minute drive, is the Garden of the Gods, which I strongly recommend you visit as well. Go to Pikes Peak first thing in the morning, especially if you're riding or if you want to have a good time going up or down, to avoid a lot of the crowds, because as you'll see here in a bit as we're coming down, hit a huge, going up the mountain, it was a huge line to go back up. And I think this was like 11 o'clock or so that we were coming down at. But enormous line. And there, I believe, yeah, there's a couple of stops on the way up and down that you can stop and like either picnic or there's like a gift shop. Gift shop is super kind of unimpressive, and the view isn't all that impressive, but worth a stop for sure for making a day of it. But the Garden of the Gods right next to Pikes Peak is just beautiful. It's such an interesting part of Colorado. Definitely worth a visit. Pack your hiking shoes if you're walking around or something. Pay attention to the once you're there, all the belays that are strewn up around the rocks. So I have a bone to pick with these riders up ahead. These are like the GS guys, the Tiger guys that are essentially ADV riders. They're going slow as shit, right? One of them had 1 million passenger. And I mean, if you see two guys that have caught up with you and that you've heard hammering down the mountain, let us pass, right? All the cars were gracious enough to let us pass. No one really had a problem with it. These guys stayed exactly where they are the entire rest of the way down. And super annoying, right? The both of us, Greg and I, were just kind of taken aback by this a little bit. So, yeah, super annoying. Either that or speed up. Ride your own ride, that kind of bullshit, all that, but let's speed up the rest of this because I want to show you the line all the way to the end. Anyway, that's it.